Hey everybody, welcome to Rooftop University. My name is Dennis Riley and I've spent about 21 years in this crazy industry we call roofing. I went to work in the 80s for a union roofing company in Chicago that did primarily new construction roofing. I loaded roofs, I installed them, I tore them off, and I eventually got into estimating and sales and began to focus on alternatives to the new construction side of the business. In the late 80s, I introduced a product to the Chicago market called Rooftop Maintenance Agreements. I sold 1,200 quarterly service agreements over the next 3 years that eventually produced a very predictable $5 million worth of service business that typically generated another $7 to $10 million worth of roof replacement work. Now, I learned quickly that service work is very transactional and dependent on great automated systems. I also learned that buyers don't look for companies that do great roofing. They really look for companies that help them manage their roofing. Now, some great local service relationships led to national opportunity for me. And during the next 10 years, I served as president of a nationwide consulting firm, representing over 2,800 building owners, including Macy's, UPS, Boeing, Coca-Cola, and a whole lot more. We became appointed as the industry experts on behalf of the plaintiffs in a nationwide class action lawsuit for a roofing installation that virtually destroyed metal roof decks. I built some of the earliest roof management systems that provided online access to building owners, adjusters, claims administrators, and the contractors who performed the work, who were required to meticulously document and upload their billings in this complicated claim process. We developed standardized systems for inspecting over 4,000 properties and tracking them through that very complicated claim process. During the next 5 years, I entered into developmental partnerships with Siemens and Elcon Labs to develop facility management software built around what was important to them. I learned firsthand how to structure data the way they need to see it in order to make buying decisions. I also learned that very little of what we thought was so important as contractors actually had anything to do with the way a facility manager actually makes a buying decision. In 2010, I was retained by the United States Postal Service to help develop mobile applications that would allow them to monitor maintenance and inspection activity as it took place across the country on their 9,600 facilities from one centralized system in Washington, D.C. I published the 250-page USPS Roof Management Initiative, which resulted in the single largest service and maintenance contract ever awarded in the United States. All of these experiences evolved into FCS Control commercial roofing software. Now, Rooftop University is really the culmination of all of my industry experiences and the work that I've done with over 250 contractors who have been focused on taking their company from good to great. It's been built into a comprehensive 34 course hour curriculum that takes a fairly intense commitment to get involved with. Now, what I've done with this executive video series is take the best and the most important topics inside of the Rooftop University expanded curriculum and shrunk them down into a condensed video series that comprises of 5 to 10 minute videos that got the best of what we have in Rooftop University. While a company would typically spend up to $15,000 to have Rooftop University taught to them on site, you can attend this video series at no cost through some really creative promotions put together by our sponsor, FCS Control Commercial Roofing Software. So what are you waiting for? Click on the button below and let's get started. Hi, and welcome back to Rooftop University. You know, throughout this series, you're going to hear us talk a lot about control. And control is a critical element to being able to take your company from good to great. So, a few questions that might help you determine whether you really have control of your company. The first is, how much new construction versus roof replacement does your company do? Now, as everyone knows, there's risk that's associated with new construction work. You're dealing with a job that's controlled by a third party, payment terms that are not favorable for you. You sign a contract that's about this thick, you probably don't even read, and then you have to follow a schedule that's determined by somebody else. All sorts of risk. So when we're talking about control, taking control of your organization and having control, risk takes control away. So the less risk we have, the more control we have within our organization. So that's that first question. How much new construction do you do versus roof replacement? Of the roof replacements that you do, how many of them are direct for the owner? And this doesn't mean a consultant's involved. It doesn't mean it's a school. I'm talking about, of the roof replacements that you do, what percentage is performed directly for an owner on your contract where you control the spec and you control the schedule? Question 3. What percentage of those sales are produced by opportunities you create? Now I'm talking about shaking the trees. You're going out and you're creating opportunity, whether it's through an inspection program or whether it's from a salesman who's shaking the trees. But what percentage of the sales that you do on an annual basis come from opportunities that you create? I mean, think about it. If everything that you do comes from the history of work that you've done, comes from referrals, comes from past customers, comes from general contractors, invitations to bid, what would happen if you cut your phone line? Would you know what to do? Would you know how to go into the market and create work? Because that's what control is. Control is deciding what your sales are going to be and then executing, going out and creating the opportunity and making sure that there's a reasonable percentage of work that you do that comes from the opportunity that you create. You go out and you pick the customers that you want to work for. You determine what the specs are. You determine what the contract looks like. You don't do roofs that you don't make money on. You determine the payment terms, which are load the roof and get 50% of the check. You determine your fate. You determine what your sales are, and you put the infrastructure in place to be able to create that opportunity and generate those sales. Guys, this is really nothing more than a mathematical equation. The number of phone calls it takes to create an inspection, the number of inspections it takes to uncover a re-roof opportunity, the amount of re-roofs that we have to bid in order to get a sale. You have to learn those matrix, and you have to create your own opportunity and take control of your organization. We're going to talk about business models that allow you to do just that. In the beginning of the year, you determine what your sales are going to be, and then you execute a business plan that'll ensure that you get there. And throughout this video series, you're going to see the tools that we use to be able to arrive at those numbers that you need to hit on a daily, on a weekly basis to be able to impact that big annual number that you want to hit on a year-to-year basis. The second critical element, as opposed to where you get your work, is who sells the work within your organization. If you're like a lot of companies, you probably have maybe 1 or 2 key individuals that sell 70% of the work that your company produces on an annual basis. Guys, that's not control. I don't even care if it's the owner that does it. What if you get hit by a car tomorrow? 60% of your sales go away? What we're going to be reviewing is business models that make it so that you can create opportunity, that you can stay in control. And more importantly, we're going to create opportunities that allow people throughout your organization to be able to impact the sales numbers. We're not going to be so reliant on 1 or 2 individuals that when they retire, we just go out of business. I mean, think about this for a second, guys. What's your company really worth if 80% of the sales are generated by 2 guys who are going to retire in the next 5 years? You don't have a scalable model. If someone was going to buy your business and those guys weren't included, what would you get? So the net worth of your company is determined based upon how scalable your company is. Are there 1 or 2 critical elements that can take your company down? That's not control. So once again, we're going to focus on systems that allow us to gain better control within our company through the ability to increase sales, through the ability to create our own opportunity, and then ultimately create reoccurring revenue. Join us next week where we talk about those business models. Thanks.